right? This little button that got cut in half here, that's our pituitary gland, right? So pituitary. This white material, that was our dura mater, so that's our most superficial meninge. Pia mater, so this was where we kind of see that waxy stuff on the top there. That was our pia, so that's our deepest meninge. Our two cerebral hemispheres, so you actually separated them. So you have your left and right cerebral hemispheres, and we cut along the longitudinal fissure. So that was that dividing piece between the two hemispheres. The transverse fissure was the one back here, and that's the one between the cerebrum and the cerebellum. Now on the cerebrum, we had our cerebral lobes. So we had frontal, parietal, the two temporals, where my two fingers are, and the occipital back there. So remember, don't get confused with the occipital versus the cerebellum, because those are different structures. From the underside, we were locating different parts of the brainstem. So we start, let's see if I can get these to stick together. We started down here because this is spinal cord. So I know from inferior to superior, I've got the medulla oblongata, this kind of raised up portion. It kind of has a belly on it. That's our pons. And then towards the center of the brain was our midbrain. The other big one, Haley, you're going to pull down on that for me, was on the inside. Remember, we found Garfield on the inside? I'm going to pull it down a little bit more. There you go. So his eyes and his mustache, remember? That was our big long word. So that's the corpora quadrigemina. So that's basically the posterior aspect of the midbrain. So Garfield in there. And then where Haley is grabbing onto right there, that's the cerebellum. And when we opened up the cerebellum, we saw clear divisions of gray versus white matter. So we can see our white in the middle, a little tree there. I can also from the inside see medulla oblongata, pons, midbrain. If I look here, if you remember this band of axons, this is white matter, so it's myelinated axons. That was our corpus callosum, so that connected the two hemispheres together. That way they can talk back and forth. Now underneath that was our diencephalon. So we had our round structure. That was the thalamus. Here. This gray area underneath it is our hypothalamus. And then which side is not on this one? I don't know how to get both of you guys on it. And then I'll flip it around for you guys. This round guy, so here's our thalamus. Right behind that, that was our pineal gland. Right there.
It's melatonin.
There you go. So that guy, let's see here, right here, that round guy. Let's see, the optic stuff. So I'm gonna stick these guys back together. Oops. Slimy. There we go. So remember that our eyes are up in the front, but the visual cortex is back in the occipital lobe of the cerebrum. So we had our two optic nerves. So kind of this X shape right here, the front of that, that's what would be coming off the back of the eyes. So those are your optic nerves. They cross, they make that X shape. That was our optic chiasm. And then what's underneath here would be the optic tracts, which basically we go from the eyes, optic nerves, cross over optic chiasm, back to the occipital cortex with the optic tracts. We also talked about these guys here, right? Those were our olfactory bulbs. So we kind of start processing what we smell. And then the olfactory nerves come off of the back of those. So that would take that information back to the olfactory cortex. And then the last part was our, where do we go? Ventricles. What's inside of our ventricles? Yeah, cerebrospinal fluid. So we had our two, let's see here. Which one's going to open up? Our two lateral fissures. Oh, there we go. So if I kind of pull that open a little bit there, see that open up? That was our lateral. So we have one on both sides, right? And then underneath the diencephalon, or the corpus callosum surrounding the diencephalon, that open area there, that was our third. We passed from our third through this little river, went towards the back, and we said we had this little, it looked like a tear. So if I kind of pull that a little bit, it looks like there's a tear right by my thumb. That was our fourth ventricle. So that guy right there. And then we would go from the fourth into that central canal of the spinal